minuscule lights that dotted the city on her skin flared in response to the fresh oxygen. "Thames," she whispered inside her head. "Please, dear Christ, let me be in time." She turned the corner and stared. If her voice had still belonged to her, she would have laughed. But instead, she just stood there in silence, her mouth open, while her chest heaved and her jaw ached. Garner Street, the road where she'd lived all her life until 3 months ago, had been spared. She stumped towards number 18 in a relieved daze. Wilting plants and dead bracken blocked the gate from opening more than a few inches, but she knew that gap well and squeezed through it with ease. Chapped paint surrounded a letterbox with so fierce a spring that when she was a kid she'd imagined it was the snapping jaws of a brass wolf. She smiled to herself, back when we had to pretend. The place looked the same as always, the same as it had the night she'd fled it, the night Mater Viae returned. She relived it between eye blinks, the blue glare from the blazing sewer manders reflecting off the walls, the stink of burning methane and wet cement, the terrified faces of London's masonry men pressing out of the brickwork, their mouths silently shaping pleas for help. The walls had rippled as Mater Viae's clailing soldiers swarmed under them, clamping red hands over those screaming mouths and pulling them back beneath the surface. The sodiumites had fled their bulbs in bright panic, leaving darkness and silence in their wake when everything passed on. And the cranes. A spindly shape caught her eye and she looked up. A crane loomed over the tiled roofs at the far end of the street. It was stock still. "If you're looking for something to be grateful for, Beth," she told herself, "there's always that." When Mater Viae first stepped through the mirror, the cranes had started to move. For 3 days and 3 nights they'd torn at the flesh of the city, but then, as suddenly as they'd woken, they'd stopped, fallen silent. Not a single crane had moved since. No one knew why, but it was the smallest of small mercies, and Beth wasn't complaining. She fumbled in the pocket of her hoodie but came up empty. "You've got to be kidding me. What kind of street goddess locks herself out of her own damn house?" Lizard claws pricked their way down her arm, and Oscar appeared on her hand, growling at her questioningly. Beth sighed and nodded. The sewermander rolled an eye and moved towards the lock. There was a faint hiss from inside the house, from the direction of the kitchen. Beth smelled gas. Oscar's tongue flicked out. Blue flame flared in the keyhole, and with a snap sizzle, the lock vanished and was replaced by smoke, charred wood, and a hole 2 inches across. Beth stroked the back of Oscar's head, and he let out a self-satisfied purr. Ah, the sewer dragon. What self-respecting burglar would be seen without one? She pushed inside and let her feet settle flat on the carpet. For a moment she swayed in place, stretching her feet, wiggling her toes, and relishing the return of her balance as the tension ran out of her insteps. The place smelled of dust and next door's interloping cat. The house felt smaller than it had when she'd left it, like a 3/4 scale mock-up for a film set. She hurried up the stairs, passing photos of her mum and dad and herself as a kid. She trailed her tile-clad fingertips across them as she passed, but she didn't look at them. A cobweb stretched across the doorway to her room, and she broke it like a finishing line tape. A sunbeam shone in through the skylight. Old sketches were strewn all over the floor. She accidentally kicked a mug over, and cold, mould-skinned tea crept over a half-finished flamenco dancer with swirling charcoal galaxies for eyes. She yanked her wardrobe open, shoveled armfuls of clothes out of the way, and pulled out a battered Crayola carry case. Over the years, that yellow plastic box had held her diaries, her love letters, both the ones she'd received and the ones she hadn't had the guts to send. Sadly, they were seldom to the